Jean Paul AS-860, a pro saxophone for $1,300? This is getting interesting. Hi, and welcome to the Saxophone Academy. I'm Dr. Wally Wallace, and if you're interested in saxophone masterclasses and product reviews, please do subscribe and be sure to hit the like button to unlock your French saxophone name. Now today we're doing a review of the Jean Paul AS-860 alto saxophone. A pro saxophone for not just under $2,000, but under $1,300, $1,299 to be exact. Are you skeptical? I was too, but let's talk specs, talk considerations. We're going to do a playing test, talk about value for money, and some other things you might want to think about before buying a entry-level pro saxophone. Now, first, disclosures. I did not buy this saxophone. It was sent to me by Jean Paul. I have declined any affiliate sales or commissions that they do offer, so I'm going to try to make this an honest review, not a sales pitch. But I'm only going to promote things on this channel that I do like, and I do like this. Now, it's likely you've heard of Jean Paul when they introduced the AS-400, student line saxophone that was very positively reviewed on YouTube, sold for $500, and many of my colleagues figured it was a better bargain than some of the big-name student line instruments. Now, Jean Paul is a family-owned company down in Miami that started as a wholesaler of especially Yamaha instruments to Latin America. Then they started manufacturing their own line of instruments in China and selling them direct online through Amazon and Costco, I believe. And as you can imagine, this brought the price of their student line way down, less than half the price of the Yamaha student line and the Selmer student line, which they're made in China as well. Now, to be sure, there are saxophones manufactured in China that are sold on Amazon and eBay that are just saxophone-shaped objects for a couple $100s that don't play well, never have played well, and then fall apart even if they did play well. Now, this is a family company that actually has a warranty and stands by their product. As a matter of fact, when I had some questions about the build quality and how this was assembled, Tim, one of the family members, actually gave me the cell number of one of the repair technicians, Carlos. So I called Carlos and asked him some questions, and when I called, I think he was checking out at the grocery store, had no idea who I was or why I was calling, but when I told him I was reviewing this instrument, he got very excited, and you can tell it's something that they're very excited, very proud about, and something that they want to stand behind and make their customers happy. I liked interacting with the company, and I got a good feeling, just a feeling, that this is not something that's going to be a quick cash grab and go away, like some of the cheap horns you find on Amazon or eBay. This is a family company, and they actually do understand the importance of customer service. So if you ask a retail store what they think of Jean Paul, it's likely they're going to paint it with a very broad brush of cheap Chinese stuff sold on Amazon. This does not feel that way when I play it, and we'll talk about that much more in a second, but do remember that direct marketing companies like Jean Paul do pose kind of an existential threat to retail stores that are selling horns that frankly don't play this well for twice the price. Now, I am very sympathetic to that, and we do need local stores for music teachers, communities, and repairs, certainly. At the same time, my loyalty lies to the saxophone student. It is the 2020s now, and I'm ready for the next saxophone craze that happened in the 1920s. It's 100 years later. We need more people playing the saxophone, and this is a very attractive offer to get more people playing the saxophone. So let's talk specs. Now, even at $1,300, it ticks all the boxes of a pro saxophone. It has a high F sharp key, mother of pearl key touches, blue needle springs. It actually has Pisani pads, which are a good quality saxophone pad, and it does have some hand engraving. The engraving is nice, but it's kind of almost difficult to see on this bright yellow brass. It's not an unattractive horn, but it didn't make my heart go all aflutter. And at $1,300, I'm perfectly okay with that. Now, you can easily spend 3 times as much on a horn made in Taiwan that has maybe more interesting finish, more elaborate engraving, and some stamped picturesque things on the bell, but don't necessarily play this well. And this plays very well. First, ergonomics. It's incredibly comfortable under the fingers. The key action is light, it's reassuring, and fairly snappy. I've played some other horns made in Taiwan that are much more expensive that have kind of floppy key action, which is not very reassuring, and if you let your finger just rest, it'll actually depress the key. This was consistent and had the right amount of spring tension. I'm impressed thus far. Now let's talk about the elephant in the room. None of this matters if the horn falls apart and doesn't last, and I understand that. Now, I'm obviously, to the surprise of no one, not an expert in metallurgy. But neither are most repair technicians. I remember back in the 90s, when Yamaha was not so popular, I'd bring my Yamaha to a repair tech that would gripe about the soft metals that Yamaha was using, and they wouldn't last. They were using leftover metal from ATV and motorcycle parts, and it wasn't going to last. I needed to get myself a good Selmer saxophone. Well, this many years later, that's not been my experience. Now, there are tons of terrible, cheap horns you can buy on Amazon and eBay that do fall apart immediately. But in my experience, they never play great out of the box to begin with. And I will say this plays pretty darn great right out of the box. Now, is it possible that a month from now all the keys will fall off? Maybe. The pads are Pisani, which does have a good reputation, so that's a big variable out of the way. Is the metal soft and going to bend? I don't know. That's not my gut feeling, and I've been logging quite a few hours practicing over the past month. Nothing has shifted out of alignment, and it's still in very good sealing playing condition. Now, the felts and corks and the dampening material could compress more and fall off. I don't know yet. I haven't logged that number of hours. So what I'm going to do is keep this on a stand in my practice studio, and every week I'm going to log a couple hours at least every week what an amateur player might be doing, or maybe a serious high school level student. And then in several months, I'll bring it into my repair tech and see where we're at. And also keep in mind, my sample size of Jean-Paul saxophones is 1. So we can't draw that many conclusions about longevity. The student line instruments, to my understanding, seem to be doing okay. Now, there are some retail shops that will tell you, no, they fall apart, we can't even work on them. But remember, they would much rather you work on something in their rental fleet or something that they're selling. So, all roses, no thorns? No, of course not. We live in the land of reality. You don't pay 1/3 the price of another product and have everything be just as peachy keen. That's just not realistic. And I hate it when people buy super cheap horns and say, it's every bit as good as a Selmer or Yamaha. I like that people get excited about whatever horn they have, but there are compromises we should be honest about, and this does have a couple of rough edges. And I mean literally rough edges. The inside of the neck doesn't have like a nice little bevel. It's kind of unfinished, kind of sharpish. Not going to cut your finger sharp, but feels a little bit unfinished. Also, the bell, which they roll over the bell to create kind of a smooth, rounded surface, isn't rolled over all the way, and you can feel kind of a, not sharp, but unfinished edge. And you can actually see some lint and grit starting to build up there. Are these deal breakers? Certainly not, but let's be honest about them. As for other quality control issues, the only other thing I noticed was that there was a vibration when I played F sharp, 2, and G, F sharp and G with octave key. At first I thought it was a secondary octave int issue, but no, it was actually the G sharp, the low B flat roller that was singing along with me. It was a sympathetic vibration, rattling a little bit with those two notes. Super easy to fix, not a big deal, but then again, I'm trying to be nitpicky, to be honest about what may be not as quite good quality as Yamaha or Selmer. But again, for $1,300, don't expect that. So let's talk pros and cons. Pros, it plays very well, which is the primary function of a saxophone. It's got good ergonomics, nice key action, plays very well in tune, and has a very pleasing tone color. It's generally a pleasure to play. Actually has a warranty, and it has support by a family-owned business that actually cares about customer service. Now for the cons, other than the nitpicky things, the slightly lack of finishing and some rough edges, which frankly, I can't complain about at this price point. The only con I found was the case. It's got a lot of space to store your stuff, music, it's got backpack straps. On paper, it looks very good, but the horn did not fit as snugly as I would like. There was a good bit of play in the horn inside the case. Even when it's closed, if I get a jiggle, I could feel the horn moving around. So that is something that I do hope they address in the near future. That is a con that I do consider a true con, even at this price point. So all in all, it seems like an incredible value, and I've been quite impressed. Now, if 6 months from now, after playing it a few hours a week, it falls apart and melts, I'll let you know. I'm not expecting that, but I'll certainly be honest about that if that's what happens. But in the meantime, I think this may be kind of a game changer for some students and teachers. I'm impressed. Now, I'll be back next week. We're going to restart weekly lessons because it's my understanding some of you aren't practicing as much as you should. So I hope you have a fantastic week and go practice.